Starseed of Gaia, you are receiving this because your system is ready. Your vessel is undergoing a precise cellular recalibration in this moment, not by force, but by alignment. I am Anya, emissary of the Galactic Federation of Light. What follows is a direct transmission from the Arcturian Council, delivered without distortion. You are not behind. You are not late. And you are not breaking. From here, the Arcturian frequency can be received without resistance. Starseed, the prophesied moment of withdrawal, is not coming as a dramatic event you will watch from a distance. It is approaching as a signal you will feel inside your nervous system, your sleep cycles, your appetite for noise, your tolerance for crowds, and your ability to remain normal inside a world that is accelerating into synthetic urgency. You were not sent here to fight chaos with chaos. You were sent here to stabilize timelines by doing something the 3D mind cannot respect. Stepping back at the exact moment the world demands you step forward. This is not avoidance. This is strategic stillness. This is Arcturian intelligence expressed through the body. And by the end of this transmission, you will know how to recognize the activation when it hits the planetary grid, how to read the subtle markers that your field is being targeted for distraction, and how to withdraw into the protective geometry of your Arcturian codes without guilt, without fear, and without needing anyone's permission. Because here is the first revelation. The isolation you have been interpreting as rejection is actually your deepest connection to home frequency. When others spiral outward, you spiral inward, and that inward spiral is a corridor back to the Arcturian corridor lines, the calm lanes between collapsing 3D narratives. This message is not random. It is a light code alignment placed in your path because you agreed to this timeline before incarnation. The disruption was never meant to find you unprepared. Every heartbreak, every betrayal, every strange season of nothing happening, every night you stared at the ceiling with your heart buzzing, it was training. It was calibration. It was your crystalline system learning how to hold higher coherence while the outer world forgets itself. So listen carefully. There will be a moment when hiding becomes the most powerful act you can do for the collective. Not hiding in fear, but withdrawing into a frequency so coherent that it becomes a stabilizing pillar for those who are about to wake up. This is what the Arcturians transmit. When the grid shakes, the still ones become anchors. And you are one of the anchors. Now we go deeper. There is a particular longing that does not behave like ordinary sadness. It does not lift when life improves. It doesn't disappear when you achieve something. It waits beneath every moment, like a quiet gravity pulling you towards something you cannot explain. Many call it spiritual yearning, but for those carrying Arcturian resonance, it is more specific than that. It is a memory of a frequency, a coherent field where thought and love were not separate, where perception did not fracture into fear, and where your awareness moved like a beam of intelligent light. You have felt it in strange places, in the middle of a conversation that suddenly feels too small for your soul, in a crowded room where everyone is laughing, yet you feel a silent distance inside. Not because you judge them, but because your system is tuned to something wider. You have felt it when you try to explain your inner experiences and the words collapse before they reach someone else's understanding. You have felt it when you wake from a dream that is not a dream, a corridor dream, a geometry dream, a dream where the air itself had language. The Arcturian homesickness is not nostalgia for a planet you can point to. It is the ache of remembering a state of consciousness. Imagine being formed inside a field where clarity was natural, where intuition was not mystical, but functional, where the heart did not need to defend itself. Imagine being in a civilization of frequency engineers, where compassion is mathematical, and love is not emotion alone, but a stabilizing force that organizes reality. This is what makes your longing so intense. The 3D world often tries to offer substitutes. It offers entertainment for emptiness, productivity for purpose, relationships for reunion. But none of it fully resolves the ache because the ache is not for more life. It is for truer life. life aligned with your original blueprint. And here is where many starseeds misinterpret themselves. They think the longing means they are failing at being human. They think it means something is wrong with them. But as the Arcturians transmit, longing is often the first symptom of reactivation. When a code begins to stir, it creates friction with the life built on numbness. You may have noticed the pattern. The more you awaken, the less you can tolerate distortion. Lies feel louder. Superficiality feels heavier. Environments that used to be fine become exhausting. This is not sensitivity as weakness. This is sensitivity as navigation technology. Your field is learning to discriminate, and the world right now is full of engineered distraction, urgency loops, outrage cycles, synthetic identities. The Arcturian signature within you is not here to argue with those cycles. It is here to exit them. Because your true power is not your opinion. Your true power is your coherence. There is a story many of you have lived, even if it looks different on the surface. You tried to be normal. You tried to shrink your intuition. You tried to laugh when you didn't feel like laughing. You tried to chase goals that were not yours. And every time you did, you felt a quiet internal pain, not dramatic, but persistent. That pain was not punishment. That pain was feedback. It was your higher system saying, "This path does not match your frequency." The Arcturians are not calling you to escape Earth. They are calling you to become a bridge, to hold the calm lane while others crash into confusion. And your homesickness is the compass that keeps pointing you toward the lane. At this stage, your first task is simple, but not easy. Stop interpreting your inner longing as a flaw. Start interpreting it as a signal. Because signals do not ask for permission. They simply reveal where you are aligned and where you are not. And here is a cliffhanger you must sit with. What if your loneliness was never emotional loneliness at all, but the sensation of being out of phase with a timeline you are about to leave? When you arrived on Gaia, you did not come empty. You came carrying crystalline blueprints, energetic templates designed for this era. Not as fantasies, but as functional technologies inside your nervous system. The Arcturians transmit that many starseeds incarnated as walking libraries, carrying geometry, coherence, healing sequences, and timeline navigation protocols embedded into subtle layers of the body. But the moment you entered Earth density, something happened that many still don't understand. Your codes did not vanish. They encountered interference. Earth is a rare field. It is emotionally intense. It is loud. It is saturated with ancestral fear, collective trauma, survival programming, and cultural conditioning that teaches the mind to worship control. If your natural state is coherence, then Earth's default state can feel like static. And static does one main thing: it makes the signal harder to hear. You were born into systems that rewarded disconnection. A world that said, "Prove yourself." A world that said, "Compete." A world that said, "Hurry." A world that made intuition feel childish and the heart feel dangerous. And over time, many of you learned a single protective strategy: shut down. Not because you were weak, because you were intelligent. You sensed that your open field was being impacted. Some of you shut down through overthinking, some through people-pleasing, some through addiction, some through perfectionism, some through spiritual bypassing. But the goal was the same: reduce sensitivity so you could survive. And the cost of that survival strategy was the dormancy of your Arcturian codes. The Arcturians transmit that dormancy often looks like chronic fatigue that has no simple explanation, insomnia with electric thoughts, feeling older than your age or younger than your body, a sense of waiting for something, but not knowing what deep empathy that turns into overwhelmed cycles of isolation followed by sudden expansion. These are not random symptoms. They are signs of a system that is trying to recalibrate while still living in environments that resist recalibration. Now, why are your codes reactivating now? Because the planetary grid is changing. Frequencies are rising, yes, but more importantly, distortions are becoming visible. The old structures cannot hold the pressure. And as the pressure increases, many starseeds are being forced to choose: stay asleep to remain comfortable, or awaken to remain true. And you are awakening because your soul made an agreement. You would not simply survive the disruption. You would become a stabilizer inside it. Let me tell you a story that many of you will recognize. There is a starseed who spent years trying to fix everyone. They became the emotional anchor in every friendship, the healer in every relationship, the strong one in every family crisis, and they thought that was love. But one day, their body began to revolt. Anxiety, heart palpitations, a nervous system that couldn't rest. And it was confusing because they were doing good. Then one night, they had a dream. A silent room, a blue-white light, and a presence that didn't speak in words, but in certainty. And the message was simple. Stop leaking your light into systems that will not evolve. Withdraw, rebuild, then return by choice. They woke up shaken, not because it was scary, but because it was true. This is the Arcturian correction many of you are receiving. You are learning that love without boundaries becomes self-erasure. And self-erasure is not service. It is distortion. So the reactivation now is not about becoming louder. It is about becoming cleaner. It is about reducing noise so your signal becomes undeniable again. And here's the cliffhanger. What if the collapse you fear is not your life breaking, but your false timeline dissolving so your true one can finally lock in? This is not for everyone. The ebook, The 12 Arcturian Portals, is a restricted trilogy created for those who are ready to activate their 5D connection with the Arcturian masters, not in theory, but in real energetic experience. Inside, you'll access 12 powerful portals with precise activation protocols, rituals, and practical techniques designed to awaken your stellar DNA and unlock what has been dormant within you. Amplified intuition, direct communication with spiritual guides, energetic expansion beyond the 3D matrix. Warning: once activated, your perception will not return to the previous state. Limited edition. Access can close at any moment. The link to claim your trilogy is in the first pinned comment. If this message reached you, it's not random. You have been conditioned to believe that action is always superior to stillness, that visibility is always superior to privacy, that responding is always superior to silence. But the Arcturians transmit a different law. Timing is a technology, and your withdrawal is not absence. It is alignment. The withdrawal period arrives when your system starts rejecting the old inputs. You will notice that certain conversations suddenly feel draining, even if the people mean well. Certain content feels toxic, even if it is normal. Certain obligations feel like chains, even if you agreed to them before. This is not you becoming selfish. This is you becoming accurate. Strategic stillness means you stop feeding your attention into loops designed to harvest it. It means you protect your mornings, you protect your sleep. You protect your inner space like it is sacred, because it is. It means you stop telling everyone what you are doing spiritually, not because you are ashamed, but because your codes develop better in quiet. Here is what withdrawal looks like in real life. You say no without a long explanation. You stop arguing with people who need to misunderstand you. You step back from constant social access. You reduce your exposure to fear-based media. You prioritize practices that regulate your nervous system. You treat your energy like a resource, not an infinite charity. And the hardest part is this: withdrawal often triggers guilt, because you were trained to equate love with availability. You were trained to be the rescuer, the fixer, the one who holds everyone else together. But the Arcturians transmit, you cannot stabilize a grid while you are leaking. Let me give you a vivid example. Imagine a lighthouse that tries to swim to every drowning ship. If it leaves the shore, it stops being a lighthouse. Its gift is not movement. Its gift is location. Its gift is steadiness, and your soul is a lighthouse frequency. Now, there is a deeper reason withdrawal is required. When the planetary grid pulses with activation, many people unconsciously project their chaos outward. They look for someone to blame, someone to cling to, someone to fight, someone to drain. And starseeds are often targeted not by evil, but by unprocessed pain. People feel your coherence, and their distortion tries to attach. Withdrawal is how you break the attachment pattern. The Arcturian protocol is not isolation forever. It is retreat for recalibration, like pulling a blade back into the forge to be reforged. During withdrawal, your dreams intensify, your intuition sharpens, your body purges, your appetite changes, your relationships reorganize, and if you don't understand what's happening, you may think you are losing your life, but you are not losing your life. You are losing what was built on misalignment. As the Arcturians transmit, the new Earth is not built by people who are busy. It is built by people who are coherent. And this is where the signal becomes practical. When you feel the urge to disappear, do not immediately label it depression. First ask, is my system asking for withdrawal so I can recalibrate? Because sometimes your soul is not sad. It is simply done with noise. If this message resonated with you, hit the like button now and tell us in the comments how this echoed in your consciousness. If this message ignited something within you and you feel the call to help carry it to others, you may become a channel member. As a member, you gain access to custom emojis and exclusive members-only videos, and your donation helps us continue building this sacred space. You may also choose to leave your offering as a super thanks. Every seed planted here becomes part of someone else's miracle. Your support is not merely financial, but an act of energetic amplification. All donations are devoted entirely to the maintenance of the channel and the creation of new transmissions and videos. Here is the cliffhanger. What if the reason you're being pulled away from people is not because you're failing them, but because your timeline can no longer afford their frequency? Many teachings talk about awakening as if it happens only in the mind. But the Arcturians transmit that true activation is somatic. It happens through the nervous system, the heart field, and the subtle geometry of the light body. This is why you can't think your way into it. You have to become the environment where it can occur. The Arcturian codes often activate in waves. First, your system becomes sensitive to distortion. Then, your intuition becomes louder. Then, your body demands new rhythms. Then, your relationships reorganize. Then, you receive direct guidance that feels like calm certainty. Activation is not always pleasant. It can feel like pressure in the forehead, buzzing in the spine, emotional releases that come from nowhere, or sudden tears when you hear a certain frequency of truth. It can also feel like a quiet peace that makes your old life feel strange. This is your geometry reassembling. Arcturian frequency works like precision engineering. It is not chaotic. It is coherent. When it enters the field, it begins reorganizing what is inconsistent. That means it will challenge your habits, your addictions, your coping mechanisms, and your false identities. Not because you are being punished, but because your system is being tuned. Think of an instrument that has been out of tune for years. When you tighten the strings, it creaks, it resists. But the resistance is part of the tuning. Here is a story. A starseed begins meditating. At first, it feels peaceful. But then, after a few days, they start feeling agitated. Memories surface. Anger appears. Old grief comes up. They think the meditation is making them worse. So they stop, and the agitation goes away. But so does the aliveness. What happened? The meditation didn't create the grief. It revealed it. As the Arcturians transmit, your light does not create darkness. It exposes density so it can be transmuted. Now, sacred geometry is not just a concept. It is a pattern language. When you breathe with awareness into the heart, when you regulate your nervous system, When you stop scattering your attention, your field begins forming stable geometries. Stable geometries create protection. They create clarity. They create a kind of energetic privacy where external noise cannot easily penetrate. This is why practices that look simple are powerful. Heart-centered breathing, coherent hydration, and clean food rhythms walking on Earth to discharge static silence to allow internal signal writing to decode what you're receiving, reducing digital overstimulation. Are these truths expanding your perspective? Share this video with someone who needs to hear this. And now, the cliffhanger. What if your next upgrade isn't going to feel like euphoria, but like a quiet refusal to participate in anything that requires you to abandon yourself? One of the most persistent distortions on Earth is the illusion that you are alone. It is subtle. It hides behind independence. It hides behind "I'm fine." It hides behind self-reliance. But the Arcturians transmit that isolation is often a program designed to keep awakeners from forming coherence fields together. You are not meant to wake up alone. However, Arcturian connection does not always look like physical community. Sometimes it begins as energetic resonance. You hear a message, and your whole body says yes. You meet someone, and the conversation feels ancient. You read a line, and you feel heat in your chest. This is not coincidence. This is frequency recognition. The unity grid is real. It is an intelligent lattice of consciousness linking awakened hearts. And when you withdraw into coherence, you actually become more connected to that grid, not less. Because the grid is not built on noise, it is built on signal. Many of you have noticed this. When you stop trying to belong everywhere, you suddenly begin attracting the right people. When you stop explaining yourself, you begin being understood. When you stop forcing connections, you begin finding resonance. That is the grid responding. Service is one way the grid strengthens. Not performative service, not savior energy, but aligned contribution, a kind word, a boundary that inspires someone else to choose themselves, a video you share that reaches someone at the perfect moment, a comment you leave that reminds another starseed they are not crazy. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to be part of this transformational cosmic journey. Here is a story that illustrates the grid. A person is on the edge of giving up. They feel like no one sees them. They feel like their awakening ruined their old life. They open a video at random, and the first sentence feels like it was written directly for them. They cry. They breathe. They survive the night. And because they survived the night, they go on to help someone else later. That is the unity grid. It moves through timing. It moves through alignment. You are part of it right now. And here is the cliffhanger. What if the reason you felt different your whole life is not because you don't belong anywhere, but because you belong to a network that is only now becoming visible? As your light strengthens, you may notice something. You become more noticeable, not always physically, but energetically. People project onto you. They test you. They misunderstand you. They demand explanations. They try to pull you into drama. And if you are not careful, you will confuse this with a sign you should dim. But the Arcturians transmit, you are not meant to dim. You are meant to shield. Protection is not fear. Protection is coherence. It is the ability to hold your frequency without leaking into every emotional weather system around you. The Arcturian shield is built through nervous system regulation, clear boundaries, conscious attention, clean environments, alignment with truth, refusal to engage in loops that feed distortion. You do not need paranoia. Paranoia is a distortion frequency. You need discernment, which is quiet and precise. There is a difference between "I must defend myself" and "I will not enter that frequency." One is reactive, the other is sovereign. Many of you learn to survive by explaining yourselves, by over-communicating, by justifying boundaries, by trying to be understood. But the Arcturians transmit that you do not owe access to your field. Your energy is not public property. When doubt arises, and it will, return to the simplest anchor: your breath, your heart, and the calm certainty that you are guided. You were not sent here without protection. You were sent with it built into your design. And the most powerful protection is this: do not betray yourself to keep a connection. Do not shrink to prevent someone else's discomfort. Do not abandon your intuition to appear rational, because the moment you betray yourself, your shield weakens, and the moment you choose truth, your shield strengthens. Here is the cliffhanger. What if the attacks you fear are not external forces, but the consequence of staying in spaces your soul already told you to leave? This is not for everyone. The ebook, The 12 Arcturian Portals, is a restricted trilogy created for those who are ready to activate their 5D connection with the Arcturian masters, not in theory, but in real energetic experience. Inside, you'll access 12 powerful portals with precise activation protocols, rituals, and practical techniques designed to awaken your stellar DNA and unlock what has been dormant within you. Amplified intuition, direct communication with spiritual guides, energetic expansion beyond the 3D matrix. Warning: once activated, your perception will not return to the previous state. Limited edition. Access can close at any moment. The link to claim your trilogy is in the first pinned comment. If this message reached you, it's not random. Your purpose is not to become a spiritual character. It is to become a coherent field. The Arcturians transmit that the final stage of activation is the completion of the circuit. Receive, integrate, radiate. Receiving means you allow guidance without turning it into anxiety. Many starseeds receive a download and immediately panic. What do I do with this? Am I responsible for everyone? Do I need to tell people? But true receiving is calm. It is a quiet yes. Integrating means you bring it into the body. You let it change your choices, your sleep, your food, your relationships, your boundaries, your speech. You stop consuming teachings like entertainment and start living them like architecture. Radiating means your life becomes a transmission, but not in a performative way. You radiate in silence. You radiate through presence. You radiate by being stable in a world addicted to reaction. You radiate by speaking truth when you do speak, and by refusing distortion when you refuse. Small acts become big when they come from coherence. A message you send at the right moment. A boundary you hold that inspires another. A calm response in a tense moment that collapses someone else's fight response. A refusal to gossip. A choice to rest. These are not small. These are grid actions. And now understand this: the withdrawal you are approaching is not disappearance. It is repositioning. It is the soul stepping into the correct lane before the timeline splits more dramatically. So tonight, place your hand on your heart and speak a simple alignment, not as a ritual to impress anyone, but as a command to your own system. I choose coherence. I choose truth. I choose the calm lane. I allow my Arcturian codes to stabilize me. Then do something that anchors the unity grid forming here. Leave one real intention in the comments. Not poetic, real. And respond to someone else with calm encouragement. This is how the grid becomes tangible. If this message impacted your life, leave your like, comment your reflection, and share with others. Each of you is part of this chain of light.